Well, sorry about that. Good evening, friends, and shalom, and welcome to this episode of the Watchdog, exclusively, of course, on the Synagogue News. I am your host, CJ Cox, here to tell you that we are living in biblical times, and of course, again, as I said last time, it seems like every single time we do one of these episodes, that becomes more and more apparent. And I think you guys are definitely going to see that today in our episode. We're going to try and just shoot for an hour. Of course, that's always the plan, and we always end up going like 20 to 30 minutes over the plan. So we'll see what happens. But nonetheless, that's what we're going for today. We're going to be talking a lot about the Pope and his consecration of Russia that is coming up on March the 25th. What exactly does that mean? What does it mean to consecrate Russia from the perspective of the Pontiff? Obviously, we know consecrate means to dedicate something or to make something holy. Some of you may be familiar with the definition that says to bring into the body of Christ. Well, we're going to discuss exactly what it means from the Roman Catholic perspective and what it is that the Pope is doing. Not just the Pope, but Pope Emeritus as well. That would be Benedict the 16th, for those of you who need a reminder. We're going to be getting into that, and I think it's going to be good fun. Not really. Everything is terrible always, and you should just be used to that by now, to be honest with you. But at any rate, let's go ahead and get into some of our channel housekeeping. I want to remind those of you who are here, please remember to like and share this video. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you have not done so. Hit that bell to get notified every time we go live, and get this out to all of the different social media platforms which you frequent. Get it to your friends and family, all that other kind of stuff. If you think it's worth it, of course. What good is a message without an audience to hear it, as I like to say. Also, want to remind you guys that this content is, well, I guess it's not really a reminder, right? Because we don't really do it very successfully. But this content is supposed to be posted Monday and Wednesday and Friday. It's been hectic this side of the recording equipment, so I apologize greatly. To be honest with you, I'm sure the apologies for those of you who are longtime fans are just getting tiresome at this point. I'm just habitually bad at everything, and we can just kind of accept that that's the case, right? But nonetheless, appreciate those of you guys who are doing the sharing and the liking and all the other kind of stuff. Also, if you want to help contribute to making this into a career of mine, please do consider giving to either the PayPal or the Patreon. I'm going to actually get a different Patreon, because right now this channel and the channel where I do my apologetics have the same Patreon. I'm going to go ahead and split those, because I'm going to start incentivizing the Patreon. And one of the ways I'm going to do that is by having more general political content on the Patreon, so that patrons can actually get access to some of those kinds of thoughts. So, for example, studies of a certain political document, perhaps like kind of fun things like top 10 lists or tier lists or stuff like that, right? Things that are not so much news oriented, but more political philosophy, political science oriented, economics oriented, get to know some of my theories, all that other kind of stuff. And if that stuff is interesting, to you guys, that's going to be Patreon exclusives here coming soon. And we'll be splitting the Patreon into two different accounts as a result of that. But also, if you guys would like to give a one-time donation, I do have PayPal. I think that's like all the channel housekeeping stuff. I don't have any political debates scheduled. I don't have any interviews coming up on this channel. Don't have any political collaborations coming up. Most people don't know me for the politics. They know me for the apologetics. So those things tend not to be frequent on this side of the internet. But nonetheless, just trying to think. I think that is just about everything that I have for channel housekeeping. So, excuse me. Let's go ahead and get right into the conversation today. I don't really have a pre-article discussion for you, because I kind of just use my pre-article discussion time to tell you about, new Patreon and all that other kind of stuff. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into the articles that we have today. The first one we're going to talk about is indeed the headliner. just because I want to make sure I get to it. Pope to consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So what the hell does that mean, right? What that's just a bunch of gibberish, I'm sure, to most of the people watching this. What does it actually mean? What is the Pope trying to do? And not just the Pope, but the entire Catholic Church. He's going to be joined by a couple of bishops. He's going to be joined by Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. So, this is definitely a big moment if you're a Catholic. What does it mean for the rest of us? What does it mean for the religious landscape of the world? What does it mean for the Russia-Ukraine war that's currently going on, which is the catalyst for all of this? We're going to get into that, right? And very quickly, I do want to note really quick this title I have. For those of you who may think that I'm being insulting or making a dig at the Catholic Church or something like that, I am not, I assure you. They are the ones who say they would like to dedicate this to the, quote, Immaculate Heart of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So I actually made it a little bit less, what would you say, grandiose than they would, right? So for those of you trying to, who may be, considering this like a dig at the Catholic Church, like I'm trying to say they worship Mary when really they don't or anything like that, I 100% promise you that what they are saying they're doing is consecrating Russia to the Immaculate Heart of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And we're going to read not only some news articles about what's going on right now, but we're also going to read a Wikipedia article briefly and generally going over why everything is going on now. And of course, recommending to you guys to do further reading, because Wikipedia is a great general source, but it's not a great in-depth source. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and get right to this. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I see Cryptomeria is in the live chat currently, so thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you. I actually quite appreciate Cryptomeria and a couple of the other cats who show up around here, because y'all are very much, well, I guess I couldn't say very much liberal. I'm sure we agree on more things than I realize, but nonetheless, our differences are not lost on me, and I appreciate that you guys appreciate my work, considering the fact that we do have these differences. But nonetheless, enough of that. Let's go ahead and get right into our discussion today. So this is from a local news station. I don't really know where this local news station is coming from, but as you can see, News WKRG Channel 5. Obviously, it's an affiliate, with CBS. Unfortunately, I can't really give much credit other than that, just because I don't really know exactly where it's from, if I'm being honest. But nonetheless, Pope to hold worldwide consecration to Russia, local bishop and archbishop to participate. Again, Pope to hold worldwide consecration. It should be of Russia, not to Russia, but nonetheless. Pope to hold worldwide consecration of Russia, local bishop and archbishop to participate. And this article was actually published today, which for those of you who are not watching this live is March the 21st, 2022. And it is Monday. Now, this article, like I said, is written by this CBS affiliate, WKRG. I'm not sure who the article writer is, but nonetheless, I'm sure that their name is somewhere here on the article, and we'll obviously be giving them credit once we come across that name. For those of you who may expect me to be an expert on this, I just want to warn you, I am not 100% sure, or at least I haven't been. I'm obviously a little bit more aware of it now than I was when this all started, but this whole event, consecration of Russia, right, was news to me. Once people started talking about it about a month ago, that was the first I had ever heard of it. In fact, there is a Catholic YouTuber by the name of Dr. Taylor Marshall, who is the very first person to ever familiarize you boy with this particular topic, right? Not that he did it personally, of course, he just does videos, and I ended up watching one of those videos. But nonetheless, the point is just to say, this isn't something that I know as in depth as some of the other stuff we talk about here. What I do know is obviously important, and so I want to share it with you guys. And also, there's some things that we can learn together in looking over this. But I just want to fair warn you that to a small extent, I am still learning about the consecration of Russia, what it all means, where it all started. But obviously, I wouldn't be doing this if I was just completely in the dark, right? So just a little fair warning for you guys. Let me get a drink here. All right. So, Pope Francis will hold a worldwide consecration of Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary on Friday, March the 25th, the Catholic Solemnity of the Annunciation at 11 a.m. local time. It's going to be 11 a.m., of course, his time, right? Now, a couple things that need to be noted here. You may have noticed this particular sentence, the Catholic Solemnity, of the Annunciation. Those of you who are in Commonwealth countries like Australia, Canada, etc., you'll be a little bit more familiar with this than some of my American friends. The Annunciation, otherwise known as Lady Day, is a holiday basically celebrating the Annunciation of Mary. Now, I'm being incredibly general when I describe this because this is, of course, not a holiday episode or anything like that, right? But March 25th is the traditional Catholic day to celebrate when the angel Gabriel announced the incarnation of Jesus in Mary's womb to her, which, of course, was recorded in the Bible. I believe the book of Luke is actually where it's recorded, if I'm not mistaken. It may be Matthew. I may even be both, to be honest with you. But nonetheless, if you're in, like I said, Commonwealth countries, you're probably familiar with this as Lady Day. But it's a holiday, typically a holiday surrounding Mary herself, not so much Jesus, but it is meant to commemorate the day when Gabriel had announced to the Virgin Mary that she was going to conceive a child, and that child would be the Christ child, right? So just a little brief amount of context for you guys there. We are this day, which again is March 21st, 2022, 4 days removed from Lady Day, or the Annunciation, whatever you wish to call it. So it's going to be Friday, as they already said here on this article. Hopefully we'll have an episode on Friday, and I'll have some new stuff to discuss with you guys and let you guys know, especially since they're, I think, like 12 hours ahead of where I'm currently at, meaning that, once stuff is actually going on, 11 a.m. their time is going to be, me sleeping time. And so I'll be hopefully able to wake up and actually have some more news to share with you guys. But nonetheless, just want to give you a little bit of context there. And what's the reason for this context? Well, of course, if it's a Marian holiday, and this is a dedication to a consecration, to be more precise, to Mary, well, you can kind of see why he chose the day, right? Nonetheless. The Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee announced on Facebook that Bishop William Wack will join Pope Francis in the consecration of Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary on Friday. Bishop Wack will lead this event at the Cathedral of the Sacred Heart in Pensacola, that is Florida. Bishop Wack will also lead the faithful in praying the Rosary and conclude with a reflection. Those in Pensacola are welcomed to join in this consecration in person or through a live stream provided by the diocese. There's a little link to this live stream right here. I'll go ahead and do it now, provide the article in the live chat. Also, if you're not watching this live, I will be posting it in the description, but it is not there if you're currently watching it live. But nonetheless, if you guys would like to go there, click on that link so that you know where to live stream it. There you go. It is currently now with you in the live chat. The Archdiocese of Mobile also confirmed that Archbishop Thomas Rhodey will be participating in the consecration at 11 a.m. on Friday. Of course, that's 11 a.m. Alabama time. I guess I might have actually gotten this wrong. I thought they were doing this in Ukraine, but it looks like they're actually doing this. It looks like they're actually doing this in the South, in Florida and Alabama, respectively. I thought it was just people from Florida and Alabama, but nonetheless, it's good that we caught that, right? Because you don't want to leave this show with false information. But nonetheless, at the time of the writing of this article, it is unclear if something is available for the public to attend, speaking specifically about the Archdiocese of Mobile. What is the importance of consecrating Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary? The Catholic Church believes only peace can come through the consecration. Thus, to make a true consecration, all the bishops of the world must participate with the Pope in unison. Again, all the bishops of the world must participate with the Pope in unison. In other words, it seems like they may want to call, at least at some point, some kind of a ecumenical council. Will it end up occurring? Of course, we don't know, but that is definitely something we could see as a result of this. And of course, this has been sort of flung into the forefront of mainstream news, and kind of got a nice heaping, steaming plate of this in front of Pope Francis as we speak, because of the current crisis that is going on in Russia and Ukraine. But nonetheless, it's actually something that's been going on since about the World War I era. And again, we'll read a little bit more into that in a moment, but let's get through the article. I just wanted to point out, though, before we get back to the article, right, that we could, and I think will, potentially see some sort of a ecumenical council called, some sort of a synod called, some sort of a gathering of the different bishops of the church called together as a result of this consecration. But nonetheless, in Fatima, Portugal, in the early 20th century, Our Lady of Fatima appeared to 3 children. And this is obviously from the perspective of the writer, who does appear to be a Roman Catholic himself. In total, Mary appeared 6 times on the 13th day of every month from June 1917 until October 1917. At least that is what they claim. During Our Lady's 3rd apparition on July 13th, 1917, it was made to the children, it was made clear, to the children, the importance of the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Of course, some of you may be familiar with the whole Fatima incident. We'll get into that in a little moment. Not so much that itself, as much as the consecration of Russia aspect of it, but nonetheless. The climax of World War I was beginning, and in Russia, communism was stirring, and the Bolshevik revolution was being plotted. Mary stated, again, this is alleged, quote, "The war is going to end, but if people do not cease offending God, a worse one will break out during the reign of Pius the 11th. To prevent this, I shall come to ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart and the communion of reparation of the first Saturdays. If my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted and there will be peace. If not, she will spread her errors throughout the world, causing wars and persecutions of the church," end quote. And this was allegedly something that was said to Mary when she appeared to 3 children in Fatima, Portugal. I, of course, don't believe this ever actually happened. I'm sure many of you probably do not believe that this ever actually happened, but this is the basis for the consecration of Russia, which has, of course, been thrown into our face recently as a result of the current crisis. Real quick, it says, if you wish to read all 6 apparitions of Fatima, click here. So if you guys are interested in that, click on the link I shared with you, and then click on the link within that link to get to the 6 apparitions of Fatima. Moving on. A consecration of the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary took place on October 31st, 1942, led by Pope Pius XII. And the second consecration of all individuals and people of the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary was made by Pope St. John Paul II on March 25th, 1984, which was about, it'd be 38 years to the day before this current consecration takes place, assuming that it does actually go through and nothing ends up occurring. Nonetheless, although the second consecration was made in unison with all the bishops of the world, the instructions of Fatima focus specifically on Russia. Bishop Wack encourages all to participate in the consecration of Russia and Ukraine on Friday at 11 a.m. Now, they didn't explain much about what exactly consecration was, but they did explain a little bit of it. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and read a little more. We're now going to go to this Wikipedia article I wanted to show you guys, which will do a little bit of explaining as to what consecration of Russia means, why it's a big deal, who exactly wants to do such a thing, yada, yada, so on and so forth. And so here's the Wikipedia article, Consecration of Russia. The consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of the Blessed Virgin Mary by a specific act of the reigning Pope, along with all the other Catholic bishops of the world, was allegedly ordered in a Marian apparition of Our Lady of Fatima on July 13, 1917. Sister Lucia dos Santos, one of the three visionaries, publicly stated that at different times the Blessed Virgin Mary had given her a message of promise that the consecration of Russia as a country would usher in a period of world peace. So you see, the goal here is that they think that Mary has actually divinely ordered them. You are to consecrate this country to the Pope, to the Blessed Virgin Mary, right? Specifically, the Immaculate Heart of the Blessed Virgin Mary, I guess. And as a result of that, we should see peace not only in Russia, but actually peace all over the world. Now, that's not exactly, we kind of read the quote for you already. That's not exactly what the original consecration quote says. It does seem to be more specifically talking about Russia's abilities to cause more fights, not necessarily the world to cause fights in other aspects, right? In other words, it appears the original vision said that the consecration of Russia would stop Russia from causing violence and spreading its ideology and persecuting the church, not necessarily that it would cause the world from ceasing to do those sorts of things, but nonetheless. The Vatican stated that Sister Lucia declared to them in private correspondence on November 8, 1989, that the consecration offered by Pope John Paul II in St. Peter's Square on March 25, 1984, had been properly accomplished and was accepted in heaven. Because apparently she knew that. I don't know. I'm not here necessarily to criticize the Catholic Church or what these people believe. That's obviously for the other channel, but I don't know. It just seems bizarre to me that we're going to say things like prophets don't exist and canon is closed and all that. But also, this person is apparently receiving visions and also knows that, that certain acts of men have been accepted in heaven. I don't know. Anyways, the authenticity of this is vehemently rejected by some Catholics, especially among traditionalist Catholics, including those at the Fatima Center, namely Father Nicholas Gruner, Christopher Ferrara, the Society of St. Pius X, among others, who support claims of parallelism to the Marian apparitions of Our Lady of Akita of Japan in 1973. Amongst those traditionalist Catholics, by the way, is the aforementioned Dr. Taylor Marshall. In addition to this consecration, Pope Pius XII, 1942, Pope Paul VI, 1964, Pope John Paul II, 1982 and 1984, Pope Benedict XVI, 2010, and Pope Francis, 2013, have consecrated the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Pope Pius XII verbally consecrated the peoples of Russia on July 7, 1952, in a singular manner via his papal bull, Sacro Vergente. To date, no ceremonial rite of papal consecration has been specifically addressed to Russia per verbatim, nor in complete unison with the sum total of all Catholic bishops, which is allegedly what they wish to accomplish on the 25th of this current month, March the 25th, 2022. And again, we'll see if that ends up happening. As with all Marian apparitions, the Roman Catholic Church does not require its members to believe any such claims if undesired, because it is not part of any core doctrine, also termed deposit of faith. Pope Francis announced that he would consecrate Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary on March 25th, 2022 at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. See, I knew this was happening in Rome. Maybe it's just 11 a.m. local time at each individual place. Maybe that's what's going on. But anyways. A consecrated ceremony is also scheduled in Fatima, Portugal by the papal almoner, Cardinal Konrad, I'm totally going to say this wrong, sorry, Cardinal Konrad Krajewski, I think. We're going to go with Krajewski. Accordingly, the Pontiff cordially invited all the Catholic bishops to join him along by their own volition at the same designated time within their own respective cathedrals. Okay, yeah, so it is 11 a.m. local time, and local time is to be interpreted as your own local time wherever you happen to be. So this is actually taking place at multiple times, not everybody at once in unison. So that is, I guess, the explanation there. We're going to keep reading a little bit more history and background. We won't be reading this too much, I promise, but I just want you guys to get an idea of what this is and why it is. The teaching of the Roman Catholic Church distinguishes between public revelation and private revelations. The term public revelations finds itself finds its literary expression, in the Bible and reached its fulfillment in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. In this regard, the Catechism of the Catholic Church quotes St. John of the Cross, quote, "In giving us his Son, his only word, for he possesses no other, he spoke everything to us at once in this sole word, and he has no more to say. Any person questioning God or desiring some vision or revelation would be guilty not only of foolish behavior, but also of offending him by not fixing his eyes entirely upon Christ and by living with the desire for some other novelty," end quote. Again, that is a quote from St. John of the Cross. In a meeting with Cardinal Angelo Sodano regarding this issue, Sister Lucia pointed out that she had received the vision but not its interpretation. Accordingly, members of the Catholic Church are further instructed that the Marian visions or apparitions do not take part in the deposit of faith or core doctrine and is not required for religious belief if undesired. EWTN, an American television channel that features Catholic programming, takes the position that such Marian apparitions are subjective to belief of free will and rendered as optional, not compulsory, to religious faith. According to Sister Lucia, the Virgin Mary requested the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart on several occasions. Lucia lived in Spain from 1925 to 1946 during the time of the Second Spanish Republic and the Spanish Civil War. Her first mention of the Blessed Virgin's request for the consecration of Russia is in the autumn of 1929, which is about 12 years after the vision is alleged to have taken place, by the way. In 1929, Lucia Santos was a novice at the Sisters of St. Dorothy Convent in Tuy, Spain, and Lucia reported that on the night of June 13, 1929, while she was praying in chapel, that she experienced a vision in which the Blessed Virgin said that it was God's will, that the Pope, in unison with all the bishops of the world, consecrate Russia to her Immaculate Heart. Sister Lucia reported this to her confessor, who asked her to write it down. It's interesting that they're not mentioning that this was said to have originally taken place on June the 3rd, 1917. Or July the 13th. I don't know why I said June the 3rd. Maybe it's later on. Yeah, actually, I can see it later on here. It's right here. Anyways, in two letters she sent in May 1930 to Father, probably going to say this wrong, sorry, Goncalves, her confessor, Lucia linked the consecration of Russia with the devotion of the 5 first Saturdays, which she had first discussed in context of the apparitions she had purportedly experienced previously as a postulant at again, probably going to say this one wrong, Pontevedra in 1925. The Church has issued no decision regarding the reported visions at either Pontevedra or Tuy. In August 1941, Sister Lucia wrote her third memoir in which she described the apparition of July 13, 1917, which is the original one, allegedly. She said that the Blessed Virgin Mary told them, quote, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. If what I say to you is done, many souls will be saved and there will be peace. The war, meaning the First World War, but you can see it's in brackets there, so it's not part of the original quote. The war is going to end. People do not cease offending God. A worse one will break out during the pontificate of Pius XI. Now, of course, it's important to note this is being written in August 1941, so she's claiming that she got a vision about this from 1917. There is no evidence about a vision from 1917, right? And so the details that she's adding here, this is, World War II is already kicked off at this point. The invasion of Poland was, I believe, September 3rd, 1939. Regardless, it's in September of 1939, so it's been nearly 2 years since that event's taken place. If Russia is not already at war with Nazi Germany, it's literally right around the corner, because I think it's June or July of 1941 that they end up going to war. So it's just important to note that these are conveniently coming out after Sister Lucia can confirm her quote-unquote visions are true, right? In other words, we don't have her saying this is going to happen and then it happens, but regardless. Back here, when you see a night illuminated by an unknown light, know that this is the great sign given you by God that he is about to punish the world for its crimes by means of war, famine, and persecutions of the Church and of the Holy Father. To prevent this, I shall come to ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart and the communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. Of course, that didn't happen, so there's no way you could prevent that war, and since that war was supposed to be World War II, it's literally unpreventable at this point, being as that it did happen. But regardless, if my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted, and there will be peace. If not, she will spread her errors throughout the world, causing wars and persecution of the Church. The good will be martyred, the Holy Father will have much to suffer, various nations will be annihilated. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. The Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and she will be converted, and a period of peace will be granted to the world. I guess that's where the world peace aspect comes in. Briefly, we want to read some objections of the Russian Orthodox Church, and then we're going to move on to our next article. Orthodox Christians see the Fatima consecration in the light of the history of Latin Orthodox religious conflict going back 1,000 years. They tend to interpret the Fatima consecration as an encroachment of Latin Christianity on Orthodox territory, while Catholics tend to see the matter as followers of Christ versus atheistic communism. Orthodox Christians, including those of the Russian Orthodox Church, objects to the concept of the consecration of Russia for two reasons. Number one, Russia already belonged to the Christian religion at the time of the alleged Fatima apparition and had a long history of devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary as Theotokos. Number two, belief of implicit proselytism of Russian Orthodox Christians to the Catholic faith. Orthodox Christians thus tend to understand the phrase Russia will be converted as implying conversion from Orthodox Christianity to Roman Catholicism and acceptance of papal infallibility and universal supreme jurisdiction. Some Catholics who support the position of the Catholic Church claim that the apparitions of Fatima took place after the February Revolution of 1917 that deposed Tsar Nicholas II from power and the April 16th return of Vladimir Lenin to Russia, which according to the story, that would be true. The story says that this took place on July the 13th. Obviously, both of these events would take place before that, one in February and one April the 16th, right? In this regard, they assert that Russia was already in the midst of revolution and facing a renewed threat from Bolshevism when prayers for Russia were first requested by the apparitions in May 13th of 1917. They argue this timing of the apparition and the miracle of the sun suggests that the consecration refers to the threat that Russia faced from atheist beliefs and Russian communism. At the formal request of the Episcopal Conference of Ukrainian Catholic Bishops, Pope Francis announced he would consecrate Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary on March the 25th, 2022, at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. The consecration ceremony is also scheduled in Fatima, Portugal, by the papal almoner, Cardinal Konrad Krajewski. Accordingly, the Pontiff cordially invited all the Catholic bishops to join him along by their own volition at the same designated time within their own respective cathedrals. He also invited all communities and all of the faithful. And that's where we're going to stop the reading here. So, what is the consecration of Russia? It's basically the dedication of Russia to Mary, specifically the Immaculate Heart of Mary, because I guess we're dedicating certain things to certain body parts now rather than just to the person. That's the link to the Wikipedia article, by the way. And the idea is supposed to be that this immaculation will lead to the conversion of Russia to Roman Catholicism, or at least to Christianity. I don't see how the latter could be true, considering it is primarily Christian at the moment. In fact, Vladimir Putin considers himself to be a defender of Orthodox Christianity. But regardless, it's also said to usher in a new era of peace, a new era of world peace, to be a little bit more precise, which is something I just got corrected in because I had previously stated in this exact episode that I did not read anything about world peace there. So again, I am learning here with you guys, and I appreciate your patience. Nonetheless, that's the point. It's for the most part an entirely symbolic kind of thing, right? It's probably not going to have any real impact, although that may not be entirely true, depending on what the results of this kind of thing are. Like, for example, if there is a synod or an ecumenical council called as a result of this consecration, that's obviously going to be something that is world-changing, right? It's going to have massive effects on the socio-political sphere, on the geopolitical sphere, on the religious sphere. Obviously, if we end up seeing unison between the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church on this matter, that's going to create a huge change as far as the way religion, and specifically Christendom, is perceived by the world, and also the power which it holds. Obviously, many of you know that I am not a fan of ecumenism by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's very dangerous, and I do think this could end up being another one of those stepping stones, towards a full ecumenism in Christendom. Will that happen? I don't know. We'll see. But it's something that I can certainly see in my mind's eye, especially when one considers our next two talking points. This is kind of a bad pun, to be honest with you, but nonetheless, it's a pun that I made, so you're going to have to deal with it. Obviously, we're talking here about ecumenism, and we're talking about Ukraine. So I decided to put ecumenism and Ukraine together and say the ecumenism option. Get it? Ecumenism, ecumenism, ecumenism. Ha 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 ha. I know I'm not that funny. You don't have to laugh. But regardless, what am I talking about in this? Well, let's go ahead and get our article shared. While I'm getting the article shared, I'd just like to briefly let you guys know what I am talking about when I refer to the ecumenism option is, in fact, the possibility that the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church could end up playing mediator roles in the conflict we're currently in. Not we as in the United States, but we as in the world. Obviously, the crisis that's taking place in Russia, Ukraine is what I'm talking about. This is an article from National Catholic Reporter, originally written by Pat Marin. It's pretty old now. It's about 21 days old. March 21st is what it says here, so it's about 20 days old. And it reports on something which I myself think will definitely end up being the case, and that is the potential for Pope Francis and the Russian, not just the Russian Patriarch Kirill, but also the Ecumenical Patriarch at Constantinople, Bartholomew, to actually play the mediator roles in the current conflict in Ukraine. And so let's go ahead and get right into that. Let me take a brief drink here before we get in. All right, so as Ukraine bleeds, Pope Francis and Russian Patriarch Kirill could be negotiators. Again, the article title is As Ukraine Bleeds, Pope Francis and Russian Patriarch Kirill could be negotiators. And let me say, I believe they will end up being negotiators. And I also believe that Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew in Constantinople is also going to be a very big part of the peacemaking process. But nonetheless, let's get into the article. The conflict in Ukraine and its potential to cause serious escalation between Russia and the United States gives new purpose to the season of Lent and its call to prayer and fasting. Again, this is a Catholic source, so there's going to be a Catholic bias here. I obviously don't celebrate Lent, but just note that when you are listening to my reading of this article. Does history offer any precedent for hope that this confrontation can be resolved? What does hope look like now that the shooting has begun? Between Ash Wednesday and Easter, who among our spiritual leaders can restore trust and guide the adversaries toward peace? In 1962, when the Cuban Missile Crisis, held the world hostage at the precipice of nuclear war, few people knew that quiet diplomacy by Pope John the 23rd helped provide the United States and the Soviet Union the high ground they both needed to stand down. Nikita Khrushchev seized the title of global peacekeeper the Pope was pleading for by withdrawing Soviet weapons from Cuba, while John F. Kennedy courageously conceded that the Soviets demanded by quietly removing. Hang on, let me reread that. I totally messed that sentence up. While John F. Kennedy courageously conceded what the Soviets demanded by quietly removing U.S. weapons from Turkey. By the way, taking a pause from the article, it is important to note that time and this time have two very distinct things in common. Namely, they are the only times in United States history when the country has been headed by a Catholic president. That obviously is incredibly important, considering it is Catholic belief that the Pontiff is immaculate, that the Pontiff is infallible. I cannot speak. That the Pontiff is, when he is speaking about issues which pertain to all Christians in spiritual and moral matters, is literally not capable of error. So, in other words, what he says has a whole lot of leeway with men like Joe Biden and John F. Kennedy, the two aforementioned Catholics. In August 1963, 2 months after the Pope's death from stomach cancer and 3 months before Kennedy's assassination in Dallas, the first nuclear test ban treaty was signed. Pope John's 1962 peace proclamation, followed by his encyclical Passim in Terris, are articulated the link between justice and peace, and laid the groundwork for total nuclear disarmament as imperative for any progress toward world order. But it was his personal influence with Kennedy and Khrushchev that made John a trusted broker. This was captured by NCR's then Vatican correspondent. I'm totally going to pronounce his last name wrong. I'm so sorry, guys. Peter Habelith-White? Habelith-White. That's what we're going to go with, is Habelith-White. If you guys can see, it's this word that I'm highlighting here. I'm sorry, I don't even know what language that is. But nonetheless, we'll just call him Peter. Unless they decide to use the last name. I really hope they don't. Oh, man. Anyways. In his 1985 biography, Pope John the 23rd, Shepherd of the Modern World, Peter recounts the March 1963 visit between John and Alexei Adzubay, Khrushchev's son, or Adzubai, however you say that, Khrushchev's son-in-law, and his wife, Rada Khrushcheva. Their exchange was warmed by the Pope's focus on their children and his memories of Bulgaria, where he had served as apostolic visitor for 10 years early in his career. Adzubay noted the similarity between the Pope's large peasant hands and those of his father-in-law's hands, hardened by toil. Despite the political and spiritual gulf separating the Vatican and the Soviet Union at the time, mutual trust and even affection had bridged a political crisis. These hands had symbolically collapsed around enormous differences. 60 years later, the Russian invasion of Ukraine again cast a baleful shadow over the world, and as death and destruction mount, hope of a negotiated settlement is rapidly dimming. But are there historical parallels that still offer hope? And again, I've already mentioned at least one. Joe Biden and John F. Kennedy were both Roman Catholic. I say were because John F. Kennedy, of course, is no longer around, but nonetheless, that means that the Pope has a pretty heavy influence on these gentlemen, right? I'm not saying that they're necessarily in the Pope's pocket or anything like that, but to act like there's no influence whatsoever from the Vatican on the current president, that just doesn't make any sense. And the same would be true of John F. Kennedy. And for the record, the same is also true of the 6 to 7 Supreme Court justices who are Catholic. I say 6 to 7 because Neil Gorsuch is kind of right? Whether or not he's Catholic, it's not exactly clear. He certainly was at a point in time, but nonetheless. And also the influence that the Vatican has on our current Speaker of the House, who is also Catholic. What's the point? The point is the Pope has a heck of a lot of influence, a heck of a lot of leeway over the people who currently head the United States of America. Probably even more. In fact, definitely even more than he did when we had our first Catholic president, JFK. Excuse me. Diplomatic language is limited when defining a political conflict that is also spiritual in nature. When one side must lose for the other to win, different language is needed to refrain from the issues, or to reframe the issues, rather, to offer a way forward. By the way, I see Kevin from the Trusty 8 podcast is currently in the live chat. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you. And while I'm pausing, anybody who is here, please remember to like and share the video. Subscribe if you have not done so. Hit the bell to get notified every time we go live. And get this out to all the different social media platforms which you frequent. Nonetheless, back to the article. Part of this conflict's unpredictability is expressed in this statement. Quote, no one knows what is in Vladimir Putin's head, end quote. A better question is, does anyone know what is in his heart? His long revisionist history of the collapse of the Soviet Union and the humiliation of Mother Russia offers some clues, but there are other glimpses as well. I want to be fair here. I don't think that it is right to call Vladimir Putin a revisionist. Vladimir Putin has some legitimate concerns and also definitely has some legitimate complaints. That doesn't justify his invasion of Ukraine, and it certainly doesn't justify his dictatorial hold over the people of Russia. But to act like everything that's going on in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, in the Russia-Ukraine crisis, is just all in the revisionist histories of some megamaniacal maniac, I just don't think that's true. And we did a whole episode on that if anybody's interested. Putin is the aggressor. Putin is in the wrong. Putin is an evil guy. I don't want you guys to get confused as to what I'm saying. But Putin also has legitimate concerns for the safety of Russian people in Ukraine. Putin also has legitimate national pride over certain areas which Ukraine holds, believing them to be Russian areas and not without historical precedent. Putin also, of course, really doesn't like the West, and it's not like we like him a lot either, right? So the point is just to say this is more complicated than just simply, oh, this guy's crazy, oh, this guy's mad, oh, this guy's a revisionist, right? And I think we would be wise to understand the complicated nature of this fight. Putin was born in 1952 and grew up in a working-class neighborhood in St. Petersburg. His path to power began as a KGB agent, which I think basically everybody knows at this point. But in case you didn't know, yes, Putin was a former KGB agent, or KGB, excuse me, not KGB. He was in East Germany at the time of the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union. He was forced to drive a cab to survive, but forced his future, within the corrupt autocracy. Man, I cannot speak. Within the corrupt autocracy that replaced communist control. Obsessed with restoring Russian honor, he emerged as an uncontested strongman determined to avenge the West's expansion into Russia's historical sphere of influence. Putin is also a baptized and practicing member of the Russian Orthodox Church and supports Patriarch Kirill's view that a strong national church is part of the cultural and spiritual unity of Russia. And this is kind of like what I was saying earlier as far as the conversion of Russia that they expect from the consecration to the Immaculate Heart. I don't really know what that would mean other than conversion from Orthodox Christianity, because Russia is certainly not an atheist country, and Putin is certainly not an atheist himself, right? Putin, in fact, believes himself to be a defender of Orthodox Christianity, and he said so numerous times. And for the record, sometimes he's actually legitimately been so, right? For example, his defense of Assyrian Christians in the Iraq crisis that's taken place over the last 20 to 30 years at this point, right? That's true. That exists in real life, right? His support for Armenia against Azerbaijan, that exists. That happened in real life. So, it's not even entirely without precedent that he considers himself a defender of Orthodox Christianity. I don't consider him a defender of Orthodox Christianity, but I'm just saying, we live in a little bit of a bubble here in the West where we just think that Putin's some crazy guy who's just making up a bunch of claims about himself. When in reality, there's a whole sphere of politics over there that's just completely separated from the United States, which of course is obvious, but when you live in the United States and you watch United States news and you vote in United States elections, it's less obvious, right? And the same applies to everybody else, right? If you're one of my viewers in Canada or Australia, obviously the same applies to you, but just for Canada and Australia, right? You live in Canada, Canada's your bubble. You live in Australia, Australia is your bubble. And as a result, things, in Russia and China and Israel, all that stuff, they appear distant, right? They appear to be in the confines of your bubble, but on the distant far edges of your bubble. And in reality, they're in a completely different bubble, right? But nonetheless. Reportedly, one last sentence here. Putin has applied this to his belief that Ukraine is inseparable from Russia. Reportedly, one of Putin's favorite films, The Island, a 2006 fictional drama about a young Russian during World War II captured by the Nazis on a coal barge and forced to shoot his captain to save his own life. Hang on, I misread that. Reportedly, one of Putin's favorite films was The Island, and then it says a 2006 fictional drama about a young Russian during World War II captured by the Nazis on a coal barge and forced to shoot his captain to save his own life. He escapes and is rescued by monks who accept him into their monastery on an island. Overcome with guilt, he commits to a life of penance. The film ends with the man's surprise redemption and death. The influence of this film on Putin's heroic self-image is unknown, but as he turns 70, it may conceivably shed light on his obsession to redeem himself by making Russia great again, which of course is just a stupid attempt to link Putin to Trump. Putin and Trump are not linked to each other. That is a lie. I think everybody knows that that's a lie at this point. You don't have to be a Trump supporter to understand that Trump had absolutely nothing to do with Putin's little oligarchy. I'm not a Trump supporter, as a matter of fact. And I just think that the people who are still on the Trump's and Putin's pocket train are just, frankly, they're not serious thinkers. But regardless, let's go into this. The film ends with the man surprised, I just read that. With this mindset in place, he is not likely to bow to Western sanctions. Could Francis and Kirill now initiate a conversation focused on their shared spiritual values? Is there ground for one more inspired hand claps between men of faith to restore peace? Facing him on the world stage right now is another working class figure named Joe Biden. That is debatable, but not the point of what we're doing. Whose ambitious path to power has also been shaped by tragedy, patriotism, and his faith as a Catholic. Again, Pope Francis is not what I meant to say. Sorry. Joe Biden is a Roman Catholic. He also finds his legacy in defending democracy against tyranny as America's gift to history. Biden versus Putin portends the non-negotiable collision course we are now witnessing unless something truly extraordinary takes place. Now, I just want to be clear here. The Biden versus Putin is not a thing. And I say that respectfully. I don't want to be one of those conservatives who just trashes on Biden because I don't like his policies. I think there is a certain level of respect that is due the office, and it's a certain level of respect I certainly haven't given. So I apologize for that even. That said, it is obvious to everybody who is watching that Joe Biden is not actually in control of this country. The man is barely in control of his bodily functions. And so the idea that Biden is the stalwart defender of democracy against Vladimir Putin, it's just not the case. It's just simply not the case. Maybe you could argue Kamala Harris. Maybe you could argue Nancy Pelosi is doing a lot, potentially. I don't think she is, but you could argue, I guess. Chuck Schumer is obviously the Senate Majority Leader. You could argue about certain generals or the Secretary of Defense or the Chancellor of Germany, or a lot of people you could argue as being, the bulwark. And I don't necessarily agree with any of them, but it's not Biden. It's not Biden. Y'all know that. Let's stop pretending like Joe Biden is some phenomenal president. Joe Biden is barely even a functioning person. And again, I promise you, I say that with respect. Anyways, let's just go back to this. We don't want to go on that rabbit trail, right? Nothing ventured, nothing gained is a truism. But Pope John was seen by Vatican hardliners as hopelessly naive for his detente with the Soviet Union. Fortunately, because of John's success in 1962, we are still here as the world faces another path to nuclear brinkmanship as dangerous and unpredictable as it was 60 years ago. The question now is whether another conversation is still possible that can elevate this conflict to an awareness of the spiritual values involved. In 2016, Pope Francis became the first Catholic pontiff to meet a Russian patriarch, traveling to Cuba to meet the person he calls his brother, and that is, of course, the aforementioned Patriarch Kirill. Could Francis and Kirill now initiate a conversation focused on their shared spiritual values? Is there ground for one more inspired hand claps between men of faith to restore peace? If they succeed by reaching into the heart of the standoff, it could bring us back from the brink and deliver the second greatest miracle in modern history, at least according to this guy who's writing this article, and therefore that makes him the person we're listening to right now, right? As you can probably tell by that little comment there, I'm not exactly sure that this is going to bring in any sort of lasting peace. I'm not exactly sure that this is a miracle by any stretch of the imagination, and by not exactly sure, I mean I just outright don't believe it. I do think it's going to happen, though. I think that we are going to see, potentially, right, see what happens, but I think that we are going to see Patriarch Kirill as well as Pope Francis come together with each other and attempt to make peace. And I think they probably will end up being the leaders on each respective side as far as the peace talks are concerned, whenever those peace talks actually start taking place. Now, I know some of you are thinking, wait, aren't they actually having peace talks? Haven't they been having peace talks for like a week? I'm talking about serious peace talks. I think everybody's pretty aware at this point that the current peace talks going on between Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia are just a joke, frankly. You don't have peace talks with somebody while you're currently bombing theaters in their country. But nonetheless, will we get serious peace talks? I think we will. Who's going to head those? In my personal opinion, I think it's going to be Patriarch Kirill and Patriarch Bartholomew on one side, with Pope Francis and potentially the head of the World Council of Churches on the other side. Potentially, you'll have somebody like the head of the UN playing mediator. And to be honest, I see that as a very real possibility. We were going to read a little bit about Pope Francis's major changes to the Roman Curia, but I don't think I want to. We're at 57 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and just keep this at an hour. I hope this was a good episode for you guys. I hope you appreciated it. If you did, please remember to like and share this video. And please remember to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. If you are somebody who appreciates this content, I certainly do appreciate you. You can show me how much you appreciate this content by actually giving to the Patreon. I do have a Patreon and plan on turning this all into a career. So if you would like to give to my Patreon and help me turn this into a career, I appreciate the vote of confidence. I appreciate your belief here that apparently I am worthy of making this into a career. If you don't have the money to actually give to a Patreon, which is a monthly source, then of course I do also have a PayPal. And anybody who wishes to give one time to the PayPal, I greatly appreciate y'all as well. But nonetheless, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Leave questions, comments, criticisms, concerns, critiques, anything of that nature in the live chat below. I covet your criticisms, whether that be, hey, you did really good and I think this is a great show, or, hey, you stink, you're a nasty doo-doo head and this is why. As long as you have something that is actually of substance, I covet those criticisms. So please do feel free to let your opinions be known in the comment section below. Please consider also getting on the Rumble train. I'm going to be posting this to Rumble at some point. And I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. Shalom, guys. Love y'all. I want to remind you to be watchdogs. And again, want to let you know, or want to ask you the question, rather, in the face of Armageddon, will you compromise?